guys, we're back again with another episode of Conversations with Therapists. We're so excited today because we're talking with Janessa. Janessa, say your last name for me because I'm going to say it like a white girl and I want you to say it
Oh,
properly,
you
please.
want the Spanish version? It's Borges.
Oh, so sexy.
I love
Yes,
it.
I know. Because I would have said Borges like a real white girl. So,
Well, when I worked in a high school, that's what they would call me, and the dean used to call me Gorgeous Borges. I'm like, that works.
Oh, that's not
you
okay.
know, it's
Yeah, it worked,
not.
and he was easy on the eyes, so it worked for me.
Oh,
Maybe
hello,
it is
sir.
okay.
Okay, so back to our little tidbits about Janessa. So Janessa is a first-generation Latina. I'm reading your little bio off my iPad, so y'all just bear with me. She's a first-generation Latina therapist, business strategist, and mindset coach and speaker. And you were born in Miami, and then I want to talk about how you made it from Miami up to New York. Well, we can get to there in a minute. And then you got your degree from Princeton?
NYU.
NYU. Okay. So fancy. And then you came back. How long were you lived in New Jersey for a while, were a therapist up
Mine
there?
is 18 years too long.
All right. Yeah, you stayed up there for a long time then.
I did.
Being a therapist, you opened your first private practice. I guess you just relocated it after several years
Essentially.
to Florida. So you kept your license in New Jersey, so you were
Yeah.
licensed in 2 states. Did that, and then that kind of devolved into where you're at today. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But now you help other Latinas open their businesses, market and scale their businesses, no matter what it is. And just kind of supporting that community and being a badass CEO,
Thank you.
businesswoman, and mom. So what do you have to
I
say
love
about
that intro. I love it all. So, I mean, it's a long story, and I can talk for hours, so you might want to direct me a little bit. But my parents were born in Cuba. They ended up moving to New Jersey as the very short version, through different means during the 1960s and the crisis in Cuba. So they fled. So they met there and they married there. And then when my mom was pregnant with me, they moved down to Florida because my grandparents had moved down here at one point. And I was born here. And then I went to college. I went to high school. When I was in high school, I was 17 because I'm an overachiever and I started early with everything. And in Cuban Hispanic culture, you go from your house to your husband's house. And my mom was married really young. She was 16, not because of me. And because of that, I think that she vicariously wanted to like travel and go away to college and things that she wasn't allowed to do. So she always pushed like, go away, you're so smart, go away. So I did, and I ended up ironically back in New Jersey where they originally met. But I hate the cold. It's currently 47 right now where I am. I'm dying. I had like 3 layers on earlier today. But yeah, so that's how I ended up there. I went to a private Catholic schools. Whoever knows, there's different denominations, and it was called Salesian. So the sister school to my high school was the college, and they gave me a full ride.
Oh,
So I
wow.
mean, yeah. So I mean, I applied to like Long Island University. I just wanted to get far. And not far away from my family, but just like I want to be free, and I don't want to like serve men, and like
And I want
I
to get
want to.
out of this hot, sticky weather and go to the cold yuck
No,
of New
no, 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 no.
Jersey and
Definitely
bring
wasn't
it.
part of the plan. Yes, I should have thought about that better. But I just wanted to kind of like spread my wings, and I felt like if I stayed in Florida because of my culture, I wouldn't be able to kind of like have my own life before I got married.
So Janessa, I know. Okay, so first of all, I've known Janessa now about 7 years. I've
Which
heard
is
all her
crazy.
stories. So if I start in the middle of something, Alyssa will slap my shoulder. I know
Nicely.
Janessa started doing social work in the school system, and part of what she teaches therapists in some of her talks is how the system itself is broken. And I won't get too much into that. I want you to respond to that, and then I want to talk more about how you have built this amazing Latinas Empowering Latinas membership and what you're doing to give back now. But tell us a little of kind of what the frustrations that you met when you were actually working in the schools and how that directed where you are now.
Um, all these loaded questions. This is like content for a year, not for a session or recording.
You're welcome. We'll give you these recordings. You can use them too.
I'm
Thank
not
you. Yes.
crying.
Oh,
You're
this is
fine.
everything's being repurposed. Okay, so I'll try to condense it. So when my parents came from Cuba, my dad was 13. The reason that that matters is because in Cuba, once you were 13, you were drafted into the army.
What?
Yeah.
Is that still the
Um,
thing?
Yeah, still a
Oh
thing.
my God.
Yeah. So my dad had an older brother and he was drafted. So when my dad was about to turn 13, my grandfather and my grandmother decided like we need to leave because our other this can't happen again.
Right.
So they found a way to get out. And the story and the reason of the story is and I'm writing my book. So this is like the beginning of my book. Yeah, it's really cool. And it's so like deep that it's emotional. So I remember him telling me the story of when he first moved from Cuba. He said, imagine leaving your language, your food, your culture, your friends, your neighborhood, your family, like everything, your home, and then going to China. And then the next day you're in school and everybody's speaking Chinese and the food is different and you don't know what's happening. He goes, well, that's what happened to me. And don't quote me on the dates, but he's like, we landed on Friday from Cuba, ironically to Miami. So he went through something called the Freedom Towers, which is the equivalent of Ellis Island in Miami. He went through there. The flight he was part of like a church mission that sponsored them. They got there Friday. They were kind of processed. They stayed in that tower, which is still there in downtown Miami. It's now a museum, I believe. And then they were shipped off to New Jersey, where there was a family friend that sponsored them because there was such a saturation of incoming Cubans. Like there's plots of us everywhere. So they had to like disperse us. And somebody had to claim the family. So somebody sponsored the family. And my dad goes, and then I show up at school on Monday and I'm
Wow.
walking to school. He goes, I had never seen snow before and it was snowing.
Oh
And
my
he
God.
said he walked to school and he was met by some guys. He says, with fists. So he said, I grabbed the first thing I saw, I grabbed a garbage can and I defended myself and I ended up in the principal's office. And
Yeah.
he said, imagine how my parents felt when, we just got to this new country and now your kid's being called by the principal. You're being called that your kid did something. And his story was, he said, I cried myself to sleep every single night. And the reason, which is a long winded story of why I went into social work, is because I felt that if I could be there for one kid, just one, the person I wish was there for my dad, then that would be more than enough for me. And that's how I ended up working in schools. And that's essentially the long story of why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But yeah.
So you've mentioned a lot about like Cuban tradition. You haven't. I
Yeah.
want to talk about Cuban
Yes,
tradition in
yes.
terms of not going into the army because that's awful. But like moving away and leaving all of your family. But is your Cuban, have they moved up here too, or have you just like, has your core family that moved here, have they just kind of grown and adapted all the other people that moved with them? Like, what is that?
So we're kind of like herders, I want to say, because ironically enough, remember the story I told you how my parents moved down to Florida once my mom was pregnant with me? Well, once they had me, one of my dad's sisters says, well, I'm having a baby and I want my child to have a cousin. So they ended up all moving from New Jersey to Florida. So now they're all here, all of
Oh
them.
my
Wild.
gosh. That's like a
So
just a
we
little
follow each
caravan.
other. We
Yeah.
follow each other. And then since I moved to Naples, like people are migrating here. My parents bought a place, my aunt bought a place, my other aunt just moved from Puerto Rico over here. So like we're magnets for each other.
I know. I was texting Janessa on Christmas, my little sad two-parent, one child, three child, like Christmas events, and she's
I know what you're
showing
gonna
me
say, so I'm
like
laughing.
the massive amount of people and energy and things happening in her house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that was one of my questions moving on later.
So you said you graduated early,
Yes.
and your clients even now say you're a force of nature, a go-getter. Like once you know what you want, you're not a perfectionist. You uh, get it done to reach the goal, and then you go back later to reevaluate and do your thing. So you
Yes.
started Naples Oceanside Wellness um
New Jersey.
in New, well, Naples.
Yes and no. So I started my practice in New Jersey in 2010. I think, Alyssa, I had to research my license when I first got it. So like the second I finished my hours, that's the thing about me. So I am a perfectionist, but I'm also like I don't have time to waste. So I don't know like where I fall in between that. I don't let perfectionism hold me back from something I know I want. And the second I knew I could do my hours, I did them. The second I could take my test, I took it. The second I got my license, I was like 2 weeks notice. I'm out.
And you built
So
up the six-figure practice, and then you
mhm,
spent, I would say, 5 years coaching therapists on how
mhm.
to branch out on their own to find freedom, to not work within network, which we should talk about that because that's always fun for a therapist to hear, and start their own thriving practices. So I want to kind of bridge how you were working with therapists and then realizing that the true gap and where your passion and energy lies laid. I don't know. You put yourself
Who
up
got
real
laid?
bad with that one.
Where it lays, where it landed, where it
Was
sits.
with Latinas and their businesses. So, what were the lessons learned from working with therapists and helping them build their practices and the energy and what you're finding in the new Latina community that you're working with?
So everything is so connected. So you kind of have to move back to kind of get forward. So in New Jersey, when I started everything, it took me a while to, I mean, I tell this story all the time. Like it's part of my course. I have a whole course that you helped me put together called Private Practice Blueprint. And I talk about like my office experiences and how to find an office and when I first started and taking insurance. And I tell people I did everything and I'm teaching you my mistakes so you don't make them. So I was doing everything by hand. I had nobody directing me. I didn't know what was up. And I ended up having a really successful practice while I was still working full time in the school system. So then
And how
fast
much
forward,
did you spend on courses so that other people don't have to?
like at this point, Jen, it's like double, like easy over 50 between memberships, coaching, courses. Oh yeah, I'm like lifelong
$50.
50,000. Yeah. So people are like, oh, I don't want to
But we don't
invest in
tell our
something.
husbands that.
Yeah, we don't. I'm
No.
sorry, but I mean, they listen. So
That's why we make our own money.
yes, we do. So I'm like, you got to make it. You got to make it to spend it to make it. So it was when I started investing in myself that I started learning and really growing. And I think that's one of the pieces that people don't realize is, you know, we don't have the money to invest and we're scared to invest, but then we want to grow. But hold on, as therapists, you want people to get help and you want to help the community, but then you don't want to pay to grow your business, but you want people to pay to come to you and get better. So you have to like really reevaluate that. So like lesson for whoever's listening. I lost track of my train. So once I moved in 2016, we got pregnant with 2015, we got pregnant with my daughter, 2016, with my son, because late bloomer. So it was back to back or never. So we moved, I told my husband, your family or mine, but we have to go near family. So we end up in Florida and then we got here. And this is the part that I really love. In like 6 weeks, I was up and fully running. And I was like, how the hell did I just do that? And I had like a moment. I said, because I know what I'm doing now, because I made all the mistakes before and I knew the process. So it took me months and years to fine tune my process in New Jersey. And I had a thriving practice when I left. And I was like, I was really confident that, you know, I kept my license. I still have my license in both states because trust me, after all the sacrifice, it's keeping it. But that's when I realized nobody taught me. I didn't know what I was doing. There's nothing like this for therapists. And that's when I really started there's business, you know, coaching and stuff. We're taught to be excellent clinicians. I mean, you can go to a good program and my whole line is if you have a willing patient and you have the skills, you can guide your patients where they want to go, where they need to go, right? You can be that space for them. But you can be the best clinician in the world. If you don't know how to market, you're done. And you can have a really shitty therapist who then knows how to market and they do great.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with that. But we're not taught marketing. We're not taught business. And the part of the system being broken, Jen, you mentioned before, it's not just schools, it's mental health. And it's the system that's even training therapists. They train us to go back into the system and like refeed it. So it's this cycle of, no, you have to give back. No, you have to do. And my whole line is you can still give back without having to sacrifice yourself. You're not the sacrificial lamb. Like you deserve to have a good life too. What about your mental health?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important because like it's you graduate and then it's kind of like, well, now what? Like I'm going to work for this group practice or I'm going to work for whoever's going to sign my hours off and approve my hours. And then I'm going to study for my test. So that's pretty much you eat, live, and breathe, studying, working, getting your hours. Like that's it. And then you get your hours and you get your license. And it's like, I guess I'll just keep doing that because that's what I know and that's who's signed my hours or whatever. Maybe you actually like what you're doing.
That's what you're taught. But that's what you're taught. Like if nobody tells you otherwise, right? If you have pizza your entire life and nobody's like, hey, here's some steak. And you're like, if nobody offers it to you, if you don't search for it, you don't know.
Well, and we've worked with you for a long time, but a lot of the other people that are in your kind of, I guess, adjacent you've moved out of that line, but were business coaches for established businesses. You still had to have the business up and running and going to work with these coaches. I think you hit this like little nest of people that were like, wait, I can't get to the business because I don't know how to get from somebody paying my salary to me paying my salary.
And that's
like,
my favorite thing. It's almost like I like to offer people freedom. That's like my whole thing. Like, I want you to be free. I want you to experience what I experienced. Like, you can do it. And my whole thing is, why would you? And even when I remember when I first met Jen, she was working for a different company. And why would you want to build somebody else's business? Why not build your own? Right.
well,
So,
and we definitely need the people that are
Sure.
going to build the other people's businesses. And like, some people like that. That's their jam, whatever.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
it doesn't
But not
have
for
to
me.
be. Yeah. And if you don't want it to be your jam anymore and you're like, I've always wanted to start my own business, and like, you're the perfect person. Like, let's see what that looks like and actually do it versus, well, I don't know. I can't, like, my dad is one of those people that's he did start his own business, but like, that was only to have that job stability that he would not have to go and find another business. It wasn't to like pay somebody else's salary. It was just like, I can't fire myself or whatever, which is fine. But
That's
then
what Janessa tells me all the time. I do not want employees.
Yeah. I don't want that responsibility. I want to be in charge of me. And some people don't believe that. And that's great. Like, when I first had my vision, I wanted Naples Oceanside Wellness. Did you guys ever watch, we're the same age, ever watch Private Practice, like the show? It was
Yeah, I
called
love that show.
Oceanside Wellness. Well, that's what I wanted to name.
From Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was called Private Practice, and the name of the practice was Oceanside Wellness. That's where my name came from. I tried to get it, and it wasn't available, so I had to add Naples in front of it. But I wanted that. I wanted to be a one-stop shop with like mental health wellness and physical and acupuncture and massage. I wanted that. And then I saw, as I grew, what that would entail. And I said, I don't want that extra burden or baggage. And some people love it, and that's great. Again, it's about knowing and being clear on what you want.
I know, and I've read an amazing book over Christmas break. You'd like this.
Of course you did. She bettered herself over Christmas. I rotted like a potted plant.
It's called Badass Your Brand. It was an amazing book because she was talking about how an entrepreneurs, even ones that like just kind of fall into it and decide to start their business, they start copying other businesses and building, and they're told, get employees, scale, go higher, go more. And they were like crushing under the weight of all these expenses. And when she realized that she could go back to just doing this design business with her husband, they could make more, have more flexibility, and take like less work. Like, they were trying to do this thing when really they would have been happy here and making a ton of money. And I was like, whew, simplify. Simplicity is harder than
simplify to amplify.
Are you saying that we need to fire all of our employees? Am I getting fired because you're going back to yourself?
No, the point being,
no, Jen definitely wants an empire that eventually runs itself, so no, she's not firing anybody. I know. Jen's like the opposite with that. Yeah.
No, the point being that when you try to copy other businesses for the sake of that they are successful, you end up losing what makes yourself unique. So Janessa already recognized her talent and her uniqueness and knew that she could do it and make the money that she wanted in the single practice. And I think a lot of people don't get that insight from their business coaches.
And one of the things, Alyssa, you had said before about getting to the space that some people just are fine building somebody else's business. So I want to be really clear. And I say this all the time. Entrepreneurs are cut from a different cloth. We're risk takers. We have visions, we have dreams, we have goals. And I'd rather fail creating my dream than succeed building somebody else's. So it's just a different person. So yes, you're right. Are there people that need to just be employees? Yes, and businesses need them. Are there people that want to go to group practices because they want a little bit of flexibility, but they don't want the responsibility of a private practice? Absolutely, and people need them, right? There's a place for everybody. So really, the work that I do is for people that know that they just want to be in charge of themselves.
So I want to circle back to where you're at now, but like since this is a conversation with a therapist and we're
Mhm.
talking to hopefully speaking with
Absolutely.
other therapists out there, I want to focus on kind of the steps. Like so what it looks like when you're like, okay, I'm ready to start my own business, but I know I need an office space. I'm ready to start my own business, but I know that there's going to be immediate overhead because you can't just see a client in your house anymore. I mean, maybe if you had like a
Some
garage
people
apartment,
do. Some people
but
do. I mean, I'm a big person that's like, depending on the your client base, and
I
where you're located, that was never
just like
something. Again, I know. Some
I
people do though.
yeah, I just don't know. So then you're looking at okay, now I have to rent somewhere and it needs to be like hopefully someone that's not scary, sketchy to other people, but maybe it might be, or maybe that's like what you are looking for and because it's cheap, whatever. So I want to talk about like how do you get these people, or how did you get these people to kind of kick, I don't know, kick them in their own ass and just like get going and say like, yeah, you're gonna have expenses. It's the cost of doing business
Yeah.
versus
So
like,
so good. This is in my course and this is in the book that I'm writing. Um,
Amazingly, I do
you
believe you
see?
have a few downloadable checklists that people
Oh my
can
God,
go
so many
on your
checklists.
website.
So
I'll
I
probably
have
link or
oh
resources
my
in the
God.
show.
Yes, I have the price of starting your business, your practice. I have the checklist for starting your private practice. So you're welcome and thank
and
Jen.
it's a
And
current price list. It's not like this is what it cost me to start my business in 2010 when the economy was at a different point than it is
no, no,
now.
no. It's a window. I researched. And then there's also people don't have to take into consideration everybody gets so angry sometimes when they get some of these things or I speak, but you have to be, it's relative. Like the the rent in Tennessee is different than the rent in Naples.
Yeah.
Like here it's like $1,800 a month.
A
How much
literal
would
oceanside office is going to cost more than a non-oceanside office.
And I
yeah,
would like
but
an
people
ocean
don't think about
house.
that, right?
Yeah.
So even like where you guys are located versus Nashville proper, right? That's going to
Hmm.
be different rent. So location, location, location. I tell people just start, so I at this point encourage people that start virtual, right? Just get the process going. And there's a lot of places that will rent, which is what I did, rent by the hour. So when I
Yeah.
started, I was paying
It's
$18 an
totally like
hour.
a thing that started, I don't know, 10 years ago that is now really thriving. Like these rentable office spaces that are hourly based or like day based and
Now, what I will say is it's great starting off when you don't have a clientele, but it gives you the confidence to get started. And everybody's like, oh my God, it's so much. Because sometimes it's like $40 or $50 an hour. Yes, but you're on your own boss and you're building your clientele. What happens is when you have enough hours or enough clients, then you quickly do the math, which is what usually happens to the therapist that I coach. And it's like, okay, well, now I'm ready for my own space. But what it is, it gives you the courage to kind of make the leap until you can prove to yourself, because all of this is mindset. So I love that I'm talking to therapists and I always end up with mindset stuff. But even therapists struggle with imposter syndrome. It's getting yourself out there, proving to yourself that it can succeed, it can work, you can do it, and then quickly. I mean, within months, my therapists have their full time space and usually end up growing into a group because they're growing so fast. So that goes back to, but they now know how to market their practice.
well, and I think the next part of that is like the virtual aspect is so different now. Like it's a real thing. 2020, while it sucked to everybody had to go home and like shut their doors and close their windows, um, you learned how important technology can and could be, and I think it made and broke a lot of people because made and braid, because it showed them like all of the virtual gaps in their business when you don't have that face-to-face marketing that so many past therapists, current therapists, ye old professor therapist was telling you face-to-face referrals are your biggest source, which they are, but like now you need to figure out a new way for those referrals to come in, and how are you going to keep working when you can't be face-to-face. So
Mm-hmm.
it's for us, we've even seen that huge shift where I don't know, 70% of our clients are straight virtual based right now.
Mm-hmm. And again,
Because so much better.
yes, what I will say is it does depend on your ICA, your ideal client avatar, because some people do prefer in person. So it depends on really who you're serving. Like kids is really obviously challenging to do, and it's not, you can't connect with them the same way. It depends on how old they are. There's some people that just want face to face, and then there's some people that can only do video or can only do virtual or can only do phone because of their schedules or their restrictions. And then the beauty of this too is what I tell the beauty of virtual is access. You know, I have a hormone specialist I work with. She's in Arizona. I looked at Naples and I was disappointed beyond belief. So, you know, where do you I've been working with you guys for 7 years. You're in Tennessee. Like, you don't have to be restricted by where you are anymore. You have access to more opportunities and options. So that is a beautiful thing about being online for sure.
I think it's worth knowing a person who can tell you what's worth your time, what's worth your energy, and what's something to focus on, because you just all of a sudden told them that they're now competing with all of the United States, and
But you're
You
not.
are.
You're not. You are, but you're not, because
You
you're
are, but
still
you're
you
not.
still have your state line license limits.
Well, hold on,
But-
Alyssa. No. Well, but there's, I think I lost you guys. So yes, but most people are now licensed in multiple states. Since 2020, most states are allowing cross work, and psychologists. So I'm a social worker, but there's something called NJ Pact, and it is kind of like a fraternity, sorority, union, whatever of psychologists. And I believe they are up to, don't quote me, like 32 states where they can cross work.
Wow.
We
So,
had somebody, and they were like,
Angela.
how do we rank in each of these states? And we
Remember?
were,
Well, Angela, you made my friend Angela's website.
oh yeah.
I think it's 36 states or something. So if you're part and you pay into this organization that fought for psychologists to be able to give access to people, they had state approval. Their board allows them to practice. So now, even though they're licensed in a state, if they're part of this union, they have permission to work cross state. So yes and no. So it really depends on your ICA.
But I think it's important then that somebody tells you that you have to pick somebody to talk to. You have to find a really unique specialty, and you really have to make yourself different.
Yes, I think let's move that to the next part of our chat, because it's so important.
Alyssa, why are you blushing? What did I say?
Yeah, why are you smiling?
Did I mess up your like
I'm excited.
I'm
direction?
so excited. I'm like turning red.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I know.
No, I think because now that you've opened up these borders, essentially, you're now having to focus on who you want to see. But again, let's go back to how you guys were taught and how it was kind of beaten into you in school. Like, this is who you're going to help. It's just going to be everybody. Now you're licensed and skilled to serve anybody and everybody, because that's makes sense. But it's so important to know who to talk to.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%.
And I think that that's still, even though 2020 was 5 years ago, I think that it's still really scary for people to say, like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself and pick an ICA, but it's like, dude, you're not. You're putting a virtual roadmap on your website so people can follow and come to you. And I don't think that enough people within the industry, like you were like beating people over the heads with it because you need to. But it's so important, because my favorite phrase from Janessa, if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. So I think that that's another part we need to talk about, is like why you have to work on an ICA. Like, you can't just slap the site up there and expect
Nope.
if you build it, they will come. They will not.
Yes. So
There's
that's my favorite line. See, I used that when we presented in Tennessee, and my husband was like, "That's so cheesy." I'm like, "The cheese is good." So it is. So most therapists like get their license and do their hours, and they open their practice and they sit and they're like, "Okay, the phone's gonna ring." And I said, "Nobody told me like what to do."
It's open. I have a sign on the door.
No, and people are like, "Well, that's why I go with insurance and I partner with insurance." But it's saturated. Psychology today is saturated. You still need to find a way to stand out. So the beauty in knowing your ICA. So here's the activity that I always do with everybody, and I'll have you guys interact. And I have nobody else to interact with at the moment because everybody's going to be listening, right, or watching. So if you have a heart problem, who do you go to?
Your cardiologist.
If you're pregnant, who do you go to?
Your OB-GYN.
Okay. If you have an issue with your foot, who do you go to?
I'm sorry. Jennifer said something else. What?
Oh, okay. Well, Jennifer, what did you say? Do share.
Oh, I said I blanked on everything. I'm just letting you
Oh my
listen.
gosh. Okay. So if your child has a speech issue, who do you go to?
Oh, an SLP. Well.
Okay. Yeah, well, but essentially you go to a specialist, right? So I try to tell therapists, like, you don't go to your primary if you need to have a heart transplant. You go to a cardiologist. If you have cancer, who do you go to? An oncologist. You don't go to your primary. Like, that's the entryway. But when people are Googling, right? Because everybody Googles, if you like it or not, even older people, they know how to Google, or they ask their grandchildren to Google for them. They don't put in therapist. They put in therapists for anxiety, divorce counseling, infidelity. So you need to think of what is your ideal client struggling with and what are they typing into that Google box to look
Yeah,
for you.
we spent an hour with a new client today, and she came on and said her specialty was individual therapy, and it took us a solid hour of leading her questions to get to that she liked working with people in crisis dealing with autoimmune disease who needed to make decisions about, and it just went on and on, but it took so long to break that barrier.
Well, and I think that that's another thing that's changing that we're seeing even within the last 2 years is like your services are not as concrete as they used to be because it's getting saturated. There are so many therapists, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because like you can't just say I do individual counseling
Because
and
when
marriage
somebody
counseling
Googles individual
and
therapy,
grief counseling. Okay. But like
So,
what type?
yep. So what happens is, again, and I'll give you the therapist perspective, is when we go to school, our classes are individual therapy, group therapy, couples therapy. So we're using our language, right? We're so used to being like in our own ecosystem that we don't think anymore like non-therapists. So again, how do people search for it? They're not looking for individual couples or group unless they are well versed. Maybe another therapist will look that way, right? But we're going to look for exactly what you're saying, infidelity, relationship, communication, struggling at work, life decision, death, grief, widowed. They're going to look for other things. So if you don't know who you're serving and how you're helping, you're not going to get clients. So when I have therapists, and I'm sure that they're listening, and I'm sure I annoy people, they're like, I can't get people. Like, I had a practice and I had to close it. And I'm like, well, I don't have time. I literally don't have time. And part of what I teach and why I teach it is because I get mad when people say I don't have clients because I don't have enough hours in my day to serve mine. So I call bullshit. So you don't know how to market. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They get their feelings all upset and they get all ruffled, but there's something missing and you have to look in the mirror. So the same way we want our clients to look in the mirror, we need to take a look at ours.
So let's talk a tiny bit of numbers. Let's say, okay,
Mhm.
to avoid this pigeonholing, let's say you're pigeonholing. We're going to call it that. We're going to call it the ugly word is pigeonholing. You like working with kids ages 3 to 5 who are dealing with being bullied at school. I don't know. I'm going
Yep.
really specific. Okay, whatever. They're being
No,
bullied at
that's
school,
perfect.
and it's primarily girls who are getting bullied by teachers and other kids. Okay. So it did. But that's what you've chosen. And you're like, I like helping those kids. It's so fulfilling, blah, blah, blah. So let's count, I don't know, 5 students. You have a roster of 5 students. So that's 5 hours essentially in your day. And you're
Mhm.
only seeing those kids, what do we want to say, once a week?
Mhm.
So you're through insurance, let's run the insurance numbers. Through insurance, they found you through insurance and you're getting paid $90 an hour. So that's what? 9 times 5 is $450.
It's not that generous, by the way.
Yeah, it's not. We're
No,
gonna
no,
go.
no. But 90 is high. Like,
Well, okay, so what, like $50 an hour?
I had
people
someone
don't
say 30.
realize.
That's
Yeah.
disgusting. Okay,
Especially, yes,
so
it
you're getting
is.
paid
Thank you.
$30 an hour
I know.
to
What McDonald's pays like 19. So if
for
you're making less
5
than 19, go
hours
work at McDonald's.
of very stressful, heavy work. Now, little kids are a little bit different because you are probably doing a different kind of, I know you're doing a different kind of therapy, but let's change that and say you're working with 5 couples who are just screaming and yelling at each other for all 5 of those hours that you're working with somebody, 1 day a week.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's amp that. Let's switch it. Now you're going to talk to those specific people and you're tired of those people because you want to branch out. And now you're going to move to those 5 couples outside your network who are willing to pay what, 200 an hour
My rate is
because
325.
you've started marketing to the correct people who you want to see. So if it's still those kids, now you're looking and you're shifting and you're talking outside of the network. You're talking to those kids' parents. Maybe you're mentioning specifically your location, your area. So it's still these new 5 people. So you're doing 5 hours of work, once a week for, what did you say, 350 an hour?
325.
325.
I made more yesterday, one day, than I used to make in 2 weeks working out of school.
But the whole point being,
And
though,
I was
is
making $80,000 a year working out of school.
people are willing to pay more because you're the only one doing it. You're the only
Correct.
one they can find who is working with kids 3 to 5, being bullied by teachers.
Yes.
Well, and what I'll say is, like, when we started doing a for sure niche with these therapists, is it's not a copy and paste situation. It is to an extent, but like there's so much growth and change constantly happening within that one field that like it's nice to have that expertise, and you're like, okay, I have this bubble that I'm going to stick within, but I'm going to learn everything I can about this bubble, and I'm going to be open to learning about that bubble. Like, we went to an AI seminar the other day, and it was just a general AI seminar, and the entire room looked shell-shocked, except me and Jennifer were like, tell us more. Like, how can we integrate this more with our business? And it's like, that's the virtual part of your business that's still a thriving, beating part of it that you still have to focus on, and you're still learning, but you're still within your niche, so you can reach those people in your niche better.
Okay, so while we're talking about ICA, and
I really went down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry, I got really on.
And before we wind down, your ICA, your newest ICA, Latinas, and your community, Latinas Empowering Latinas. Tell us about it.
Well, first, can you bridge your gap from general, I'm going to be a therapist, I'm now coaching therapists, now I'm going to coach specific therapists in these fields. I think at first it was women, right? You're going to be, were you working primarily with women? And then you moved from women to Latina women. And then now you've moved from Latina therapists, female therapists, to all Latinas, or are you still doing female Latinas?
Proof that evolution makes good business sense. Never stop thinking.
Latina. So, I mean, I'll work with anybody, but my ICA is Latina.
So what's the difference in working with Latinas, and what made you want to go there?
I think as Latina, so the short version is I knew how to help therapists. But when I was looking at, and we're very lucky that we're in a time and an age where there are a lot of women in the business and marketing field. So I had a lot of mentors, right, that I followed, but there was not one Latina. And I was like, not only did I not have somebody who guided me, there was absolutely nobody that looked or sounded like me. And I remember even when I was working with Jen, she was just doing like the website stuff for me in the beginning. And I got a coach, like my first coach that I paid like nice money for. And she was Southern. Nothing against you Southern ladies, but I don't sound like that. That's not my voice. So my first version, Jen, do you remember my website was like really pink with the fluffy? Like the language, it wasn't, and I always felt like, and I had this conversation with Jen, I always felt very split, and I thought it was because I was a therapist and I was a coach. And it wasn't that. It wasn't me. Like, I can't separate the therapist from me, nor do I want to. I can't separate the Latina from me.
Branding colors of what you thought other people would want to, or what you thought might be more professional.
Yes. Everything was based on what I was taught by somebody who didn't share my views, my history, my family, my culture, nothing. And I said, if I'm going to show up and serve, I don't mind serving therapists or anybody, but I'm going to show up for my people, because I wish there was another Latina I could have modeled after. And I feel that because I grew up in this cocoon in Miami, like I tell everybody, my high school was 99% Hispanic, and 98 of the 99 were all Cuban, right? So I grew up in this very sheltered, which was beautiful. Like, I didn't know differently. And then I went to school, and I didn't know what the word minority was. Didn't know, because I was never a minority where I grew up. I was a majority. Yeah. And then I went away, and it's suddenly like, oh, you speak Spanish? Oh, your color's different. Like, you know, when I moved to Naples. So, this is one of my stories that it's both like infuriating and inspiring of, again, why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I grew up in such a diverse environment, well, not diverse, but like went to school in NYU and really in my culture, and not being referred to or looked at as a minority. And then I moved to Naples, and I'm pregnant with my son, and Alyssa, every single doctor I went to, they asked me if I was on government assistance because I was Hispanic.
That's gross.
It's so gross. And My son he looks like a little Ken doll. He looks like my mom, light skin. He was born with blonde hair. Like my mom was even like, are you sure he's yours? Like when I had him, because that's how like not like me he looks. That's my mother. But it's part of the book too. Like, no filter. Yeah, no filter. Is he really yours? So my son was IVF. So I was emotional. I was in hospital bed rest for 6 weeks, and then she asked me, "Are you sure they put the right one in?" Was her words. So she was suggesting they put the wrong embryo in my uterus.
Was she being the virgin at that point?
No, she wasn't. It wasn't even out yet. But can you imagine that? She's like, "Did they put the right embryo in?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I just laid with this embryo for 6 weeks in a hospital bed, so he's mine." Anyway, so he fits in here. My daughter looks very different. And I, at my heart, am angry and outraged for her. I don't want her, respectfully, if anybody's listening to this that lives in Naples, I don't want her to grow up here. This is such a racist place. You don't want that for her. I want her to grow up sheltered in the experience that I was of, we went to Georgia and I'm like, there are Black communities and Indian communities and white communities. And we went to Tennessee and there's cowboys and cowgirls and there's like, I want exposure for them. Here, there's nothing. There's nothing. And we are judged by our color, our skin. If I walked, how about this? To this day, I'll go into a mall and I am followed.
That's awful.
But this is the reality. But then you sit here and then we're talking and then my clients see my NYU degree and I'm talking about making $325 an hour and everybody's like, but how? Well, because I'm educated. That's how. Yes, I'm educated. I know how to speak. I know how to spell. Thank you very much. I'm probably more educated than you are. It is such a entitlement. So long story of why I ended up serving our community is because there is a huge gap. And we always talk about wanting to give back to our community. And this is my way to give back. Like I want other individuals, other Latinas to know that you're not restricted, that you don't have to be boxed in, that you can have the freedom to have your own life and your own salary and your own business and your own freedom without having to feel constrained by other people asking, hey, are you like a tomato picker?
Ew.
But this
so
is
rude.
But Alyssa, this is reality. This is life.
I've never
really
ever asked somebody what their profession is before, like just assuming that they're like within a certain type of work based on what they look like. Unless they are wearing like chaps and boots and wearing a cowboy hat.
I was at Target the other day and I like to dress all in black. It's the New York in me. And an old lady looked at me. I was scrunched down looking at something for my daughter. And she's like, do you work here? And no. Do you work here?
Okay, were you wearing red?
Oh, but like, how fucking dare you? Would you ask another white person bent down scotch if they work there? No.
Like how number one, culture and race aside, like if we're not wearing red, pretty good chance I don't work here because the Target uniform has been the same for 15 years. Like, come on.
I mean, anywhere I go, if there's a badge, if they have like necklaces on or like keys, then I'd kind of like look and ask like respectfully, like, oh my God, I'm so, but how dare you?
Yeah.
But this was this week.
That sucks. I hate that. And like, I think about that now more that I've had kids. It's like, I don't want to worry about this, but I know that I have to teach my children how to be respectful to that because it's all taught. It's all taught.
Completely. And they model and guaranteed. And if you're not talking about it, then they're being impacted by their friends and what their friends' parents are teaching them.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of your Latinas Empowering Latinas membership is you're actually connecting people with other people, other entrepreneurs, other community, giving them ways to talk and present.
Yeah, can you just
issues?
do like a what is that?
Like it's not your normal business coaching either.
No. So Latinas Empowering Latinas, the podcast, the YouTube, the membership. So is an extension of me trying to figure out how can I scale? How can I give back to my community, make it affordable and still make a living, right? So I created this membership in this community and it is for motivated Latinas, entrepreneurs, people that want to grow businesses, start a business, lead their business, whatever, and support one another. So there's weekly live events. So whether it's group coaching, goal setting, today was co-working session. So we get on at the same time, we work on a goal, we work together. And then I have like office hours where if they need me to look at something, I'll look at it. And the community is 24/7. So it is truly a community of other, because again, I went from this like beautiful community to like, now I'm in marginalized lands. So I find myself now looking for my people. And somebody asked me today, my friend Angela goes, "Can I join your community?" Like I'm like, listen, I want to be very clear. Anybody is welcome to this community. Like I made it for us, but we're not excluding anybody. So like if you guys want to come in, and anybody is welcome. And it really is about just looking for people that are kind to each other, that want to support each other, that have similar goals, that work on collaborating and not competition. And that is my whole mission. I shared with Jen the other day, and I'm so excited. I will be speaking at Harvard next month. Like, can you imagine? So I'm going to be at Harvard. I know, Harvard University. Harvard College is their undergrad program, but it's still Harvard. And it is a Latina empowerment conference that they are hosting, and I will be speaking to them. And like that, I can do that it's for free. Like I love it. And to me, I remember when I found out, I was so excited, my heart was racing, and I was like a little kid. That fills me up more than any dollar sign, more than any job I've ever had, because it's not just about me. It's about other girls like my daughter. So she knows she doesn't have to, fold or bend or hide the fact that she's Latina, that we have the same opportunities that anybody else does too, because that's not taught.
No. And I could go down that rabbit hole for a while, but we're not going
Whole other session. I know.
Okay, well, awesome. We're so glad you were on this with us. I mean, we talk to you pretty regularly, but it was nice to like record us and all look nice. And
I know, and content day. And I hate that my AirPod is sticking out. I don't have like an alien thing. It's just wanting good audio for you guys. But no, I love talking to you guys. It's so much fun, and we do so much work together. And I love that you guys finally niched. I think it took me a while to get you guys to like go on. And I remember when you guys had the conversation.
They're like, niche to therapists, they need you. And
or niche to someone, just anyone.
Yeah.
Get a lane.
Yes, no, and I remember having the
love
chat.
working with therapists.
Yeah.
And I remember having the chats, and you're like, I'm trying to convince Alyssa. Alyssa gave me till December. And I'm like, no big deal. Like, we got this. And it's you guys are proof of the same thing, that once you guys niched, how much did your business not fit?
Well, and not only that, it was just like way less stressful. Like it was nice to be able to feel like I knew the answer without saying, let me look that up. I'm going to have to research that because I'm not 100% sure on where that business is at this point.
Content writing, ideas,
design.
So you guys are essentially, you're the specialists that work with therapists for marketing our website. Like, how beautiful is that?
It's great. And we are a very small team, so it's different. You're not emailing like a bot that's going to get back to you and answer 6 chat questions before you can break through to talk to somebody real.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will contact you within 48 hours.
Yeah, somebody real. A human being named Melissa.
It's not following. That's something else. That's not following a script, right?
Yeah.
And if she doesn't know the answer, she'll find it for you and answer it better than we will. She will articulate it better than we can, because that's her job. And she's really good at it. But anyway, so I digress. It was great talking to you. And we are going to link all of Janessa's new business stuff in the bottom. I think some of your old stuff is still out there, like for people to do. Is your blueprint still out there for them to access? Or
it is. And Jen, we're going to put that back on Evergreen. I decided that this morning. I mean, we have it set up, and we can plug my future new book.
And we're updating your media page with your amazing latest speaking engagements. You had 3 last month alone.
And I'm actually, everything that's essentially in my course that I teach, my masterclass, and kind of the story we shared now is going in my book. So we can link my book, because it's like the journey to private practice.
I'm so been talking about this book for 7 years.
I have.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Okay, congratulations.
Well, congratulations. And we're going to link all of it. So it'll be down there for you guys. And reach out to Janessa. She's very reachable across the interwebs. And she'd love to chat with you.
Yes, I would. Thank you guys so much.
We'll talk to you all later.
Bye.